So there we go. Okay, so you want to kind of tell them what you do?
Sure. So for Justice or Nothing, it is a strong organization. We go out and we fight social injustice, especially for our minority people. And minority doesn't just mean Black. Minority means by the law when they say 1%. 1% of something equates itself to Black. By law.
Interesting.
That's right. And it came back from way back when for these youngsters. It was during the time of J.O.N, when he was tricking people into drinking the juice and then ended up having them commit suicide. So the law, when Black people were born, white people implemented a 1%, saying anything that was mixed with Black is now Black. And that's how they started
the one drop rule.
That is right.
Okay. Now, I have heard of that before.
Right. So what we do for Dear John is Justice or Nothing. I usually get a lot of calls and they're saying, hey, my civil rights or my civil liberties have been violated. Since I also do work hand in hand with the NAACP, they're limited. The branches will do what they need to do. But since we cover it on a systemic issue, meaning a national issue, Dear John can come in individually, where the NAACP will come in systemically, which is where we're fighting today with what we call DHS or CPS, the foster care system. So while we're in Oklahoma, and people can look at it, Oklahoma ranks number 1 for all of the worst things. Pipeline to prison, meaning we rank nationally for minorities being in the penitentiary. And
you're kind of referring to the school to prison pipeline.
That is correct.
So that's the real thing. So you guys heard that. The school to prison pipeline is something that we talk about a lot. So you just heard her mention that. I think that's awesome, the fact that you can hear it not only from another source, but somebody who actually lives and breathes this every day. So I think that's really important.
Right. And so what they do, and sadly, people don't understand that. They think that everybody that goes to jail is guilty, but that's not necessarily the case. Even if you're guilty, if I have a joint or you have a joint, you may get a longer prison sentence than what I will get. That is inequality. That is a social injustice. Meaning, if you remember the little white kid who raped a young lady on camera, he got 3 months and the jail let him go. And he says it's because of affluenza, meaning his affluent status caused him to do this. But you let a Black man, and if you remember Emmett Till, I want them to look at Emmett Till. He did nothing. A white woman accused him and he was hung and beaten at 14 years of age. And that is the social injustice that we see. You get a pipeline to prison. We have a lot of minority women in prison, and it is effectively a way to stop the Black family from rising up. And that's what they try to do. So you have to remember, in the amendment, in the 14th Amendment, prison equates itself to slavery. Now, for anybody who's ever been, it does have slave trades, which means you're out in the field, you have an Aggie, and you're changed as you go through. Most of the people incarcerated are minority that have either been over-sentenced, under-sentenced, in the sense of they look for them to kind of constantly repeat themselves in the prison, which is called recidivism, and keep going in that door.
So when they talk about recidivism rate, they're generally talking about a group of people who are very prone to going right back to prison.
That's right, and it's usually minority people. But if you look at the 14th Amendment, it says slavery is acceptable if you're in prison. So look at the number of people who are in prison. Look at the race of the people that are in prison, and it's minorities.
It's like 47% Black, isn't it?
That's right. But look at the number that we honestly represent in the whole nation. We get disproportionately overrepresented in prison. We get taken here in Oklahoma.
17% of the population, but like 40, almost 50% of the prison population.
That's right. And then if you look back, if somebody has enough sense to go back and look, they are usually over-sentenced. There's not a justice. There's not a scale that says you're Black, you're white, here's the equality. It wasn't built for us. This is a system that is not built for us. So don't let the skin fool you because it's all the way Black. But generationally, you have things that happen generationally. So if you had slavery from the beginning, you have to kind of think of it blood in, blood out. You had revolutions at the beginning. This is where we are now. You have a president who now excuses the wrongdoing of his people, but he doesn't call out the wrongdoing that happens to our people. And people need to take that in consideration. So the reason for our visit is now we have a foster care system that nobody wants to speak about. Everyone here in Oklahoma, they turn their ears, churches included. They're turning a deaf ear. However, the numbers don't lie. The numbers say that we have a 5 to 6% higher rate of our kids being taken into the system. Now, think about slavery. What did they do with us as slaves? They separated husbands and wives. They had them birthing children, work in the fields, and then they would separate a wife from the child if they considered them talking back, raising a voice. So it's a matter of control at this point. Think about what Trump did. He put all the immigrants, all the kids in cages. These were not white children. These were minority children. And so it's just a repeat pattern. So what do we do as a people to stop the pattern? And it's normally your generation, the younger generation now, that's saying, this is the last generation you get to mess with. So what do your viewers do now to help stop it? They have to speak up. So you have to have that tie from your old school to your new school and join it together and say, we've had enough of this. Enough is enough. So July 14th at 9:30, we are going and we have a march happening at the Juvenile Detention Center. We've been doing it so far. We did
That's what, Wednesday?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday. This Tuesday.
This Tuesday at 9:30. We need the bodies. We need the people that says we don't even have to have had an encounter with CPS or DHS, with foster care. They just have to know that it's a real thing, that social injustice happens to our minority people. When you have a pipeline to prison, expect a Black father not to be able to be home because now he's sitting in the penitentiary. If you have for Oklahoma, and if you look it up, we rank nationally for our women being incarcerated. And these are women that have either suffered domestic violence, so then they've taken their children, they've put their children in foster care, but they have families. You'd have to ask yourself, why are our children not being placed in the family home? Now, one of the rules for DHS here, and DHS is the Department of Health and Human Services, one of the rules here is if you have a misdemeanor or a felony, then they can consider you applicable to get the children. So if you have a pipeline to prison, now you've already excluded that entire family.
You said it can be?
They can be. They can be determined to say, well, we can place this child with a family member. But 9 times out of 10, DHS doesn't. Because think about it. Our families now have felons in the family.
Let me throw something out there, because some of the people, and let us know if you guys can hear us okay, if you guys are having any issues or anything. I can bring the mic closer, but y'all said it was loud and clear. But there was a situation that happened recently in a story that I talked about where there was a mother who lost custody, I think it was of 2 of her children, if I'm not mistaken. My memory ain't that great. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But she ended up losing custody of the kids, and the kids were placed with her aunt. And so some of you guys might remember that story. And somehow the mother ended up getting the kids, because see, we didn't know who the kids were placed with. They didn't say, because obviously they have a protection policy that prevents them from being able to say who the kids are placed with, especially like in a public forum,
right,
in the news or
right,
whatever. So like if I would have just called and be like, hey, who are the kids? But they're not going to tell me.
That's right.
So we ended up finding that out later, but initially we didn't know how this woman ended up with the kids back. We just know that she had lost custody and she ended up murdering. Oh, it was in Tulsa, actually.
Yeah, Tulsa's a hot
She
thing.
murdered her 2 kids. So what she did was the kids ended up being found in the Tulsa River. And it really, really sucked.
This is the Caucasian lady.
Oh.
Because the Caucasian lady there
These
moved
are,
her kids.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
These were 2 Black kids, and the dad actually was in jail. It was a mess because they had to start a GoFundMe account to try to get bail for him to go supposedly look for his kids when he got out. He's sitting there joking and laughing during the interview while his kids were being put out the river. It is a mess.
Right,
Y'all see it, y'all know what I'm talking about. Let's not go there again. So I said, how did she get these kids back? And I said, if these kids were placed with like a foreign family, the likelihood of that biological mother getting access to those kids is not real likely. Correct. Maybe she don't know who they're with, but the chances of, because they should know that there are legal ramifications for that if they do that.
That's right.
So I figured, process of elimination, they're not going to allow her to have these kids. Maybe have some visitation, but not give the kids back. So I figured only a family member will probably do that to say, hey, these are your kids. You deserve to have time with your kids. I don't like what the system did to your kids or whatever. And the aunt gave her the kids back. And she said some of the most heinous things you could ever say about your kids. Next thing you know, kids is missing. Then we find out kids is dead. Mom has been arrested. Right. Dad is an idiot. I'm just saying, like.
So for that situation, I can tell you, for the cases that I have, for the members that I'm helping, the people, even if they put them in home with what we call kinship placement, DHS comes in and says, you don't get to talk to the parents. There's a bridging platform that could happen, but then they kind of go behind your back. So for the people that I have, I know for a fact, and I have evidence, I have audio, I have video, I have evidence. You have foster homes that have been pre-qualified to take your children. There's something wrong with that. I have families that are well equipped to take care of these families, to take care of their own kinship. And they don't have to go back and, if the families are heinous that you think that something is going to happen, these families that I have are not going to give these kids back. They're going to take care of these children. But what we're finding is that there's not only retaliation, but there's deception, there's ex parte communications, there's collusion. These families that I'm talking about are rightfully due their children. I have evidence where we have foster homes, and I'm not knocking all foster homes, so don't get me wrong. There are some children.
My mom and dad actually served in DHS. They were foster parents. I think
we have people.
Because I'm about to be 37, and they were foster parents 4 years prior to my birth.
Well, not everybody's bad. I'm saying for the people that we're trying to help, that we have shook this tree.
I was just saying, that's kind of why it means so much to me.
Right.
I definitely wanted to hear your perspective on it,
well,
because
I can tell you, I
kind of know some of it, and then I've seen the families, so I've seen
I've seen them both.
A lot of dynamics.
I've seen them both. I've seen where even I'm going, I can't help you because some of the stuff you're saying is crazy. But the families that I do help, they're highly vetted. But I can tell you, I have skin in the game. I have skin in the game where a judge told me that these kids are going to be removed until they learn to obey, until they told a foster family who was military, family members, the parents by the own court wording. The court has worded them good parents. They went through a trial. They win they didn't lose their rights. So that means they retained their parental rights, and they're going back up to trial for the same thing. That's not right. That's called double jeopardy. In a criminal case, it's double jeopardy. In a civil case, which is what the welfare system is, the child welfare system, it's called a civil estoppel. So how is it that you go through that and not get your kids, or not even get more time with your kids, but yet you're saying I'm a good parent? Why are these kids removed from sound and safe foster homes? And when things don't make sense, it's generally not true. So then we have family members who've been removed from their kids where they can't visit their kids on faulty sexual allegations. How do you get a sexual allegation when you don't even have custody of your children? But the foster family's saying there's a sexual allegation. So not only is it messed up, but how do you get that allegation if you haven't even seen your children? And I can prove it because there's a court order that says she can't be around her children, but yet the allegation came while they're in the foster home. How does that make sense? Then we see schoolwork where the name has been changed, but this parent has her parental rights. That's odd too. How is it then that the numbers that DHS is presenting, that the foster care system is presenting, is different than the numbers that they presented publicly? How do they change? They're not supposed to change. How is it then that a 9-year-old child can walk into my office begging for the rape to stop, but he's in the foster care system? I go to a meeting, the foster mother says she welcomes it when the 2-year-old brother greets her husband at the door with his mouth open to receive him. How does that make sense? These are the people, and I've gone to the governor's office, sit down and let's look at these cases. They refuse. I've gone to Justin Brown, the director. He's refused. We've gone to the Office of Civil Rights, who says that we're independent, and I can prove they're not as independent as they're saying. I can go to where a judge removed children, and this is where I'm going to shock you because these are my grandchildren, removed them from kinship home with another relative based on the fact of faulty testimony, which we can prove, and he denied access to the courts. That's illegal. That violates your civil rights. It violates the civil rights of the parents. It violates the civil rights of the foster home. And the only reason he removed them was he said, you will learn to obey. He doesn't like the fact that I advocate. So let me be clear. I'm not saying every foster home is bad. There's some good ones, but I do have an issue with our minority children automatically being placed with non-minority families, and the weight and scale of measure of saying who qualifies as foster home is different for a white than it is for a black.
Why do you think that is?
Why do you think slavery still exists in the penitentiary? Because it is a social injustice. It is there. It is a system that causes division. The mission statement of DHS says that we are there to unify. But by all the cases I have, and these are not just Oklahoma or Tulsa, I've got them from all four corners of Oklahoma. That means it's systemic. That means there's an issue. In fact, some of the people that came to protest with us last week came from Colorado. Mm-hmm. Same story, same issue, different judge, different state. How does that happen? Because it's national. It's a systemic issue. And if you notice, all systemic issues involve what? Minorities. Because see, at the beginning of time, if our rights were violated, how do you expect them to clean out and clear up if nobody's addressing them? So if you have it from the beginning of time and it's not being cleared up, this is where we are. So I don't have to wonder why that is. I know why it is. It's because of the color of skin. Because there's studies done by OU professors. I turned over all that documentation that are known as race scholars. And the media won't cover it here. Why do you think the media doesn't cover it? Because it'll be an issue. The media here hides things because they don't want to be sued. So that doesn't mean that now you're not being faithful to journalism. You're being faithful and scared to your own paycheck. The only reason why the George Floyd thing was covered here was because it had already went national. You have to look at the footprint, look at the carbon footprint of Oklahoma, look at the carbon footprint of Texas, Florida.
Because they didn't even really make it a big deal, like where it happened.
That is exactly right.
It came out 2 months after
the fact. And that's because of what? Because they really don't want that civil unrest. They really don't want people knowing what really happens. Because remember, we had a killing here as well. And what happened to the officer? She's out doing her own thing. She's teaching a class. Out of Tulsa. So you see, unless you push that envelope and fight back, nothing's ever going to change.
So let me ask you this. We're talking to an audience right now, in your opinion, not necessarily like in any legal capacity, but in your just thoughtful
Advocacy.
opinion,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think would be a solution to some of what's going on with the children and the dynamic of the Black family and mothers and fathers and things? Like, do you kind of have some ideas about that?
I do. I see. The problem is that the scales of justice are already uneven. People don't want to talk about it. When they get into the courtroom, look how the court is set up. If you want fair, you start from the root of the problem. If you want a beautiful flower, you have to have a beautiful root. You have to have something that sustains itself, that anchors itself to the ground, right? So then it grows. It grows into a branch. The branches grow leaves. The leaves grow fruit. Now, you break that apart. If you get a rotten root, it kills the tree. And that's what we find here. And in order to change it, you have to have people that speak up. There's a petition out online, and I can send you the link that says, and you know what, you don't even have to even understand it, because like some people are going to take your position. Because if I speak,
I think you might have sent me that.
Yes, I did. I sent that to you. I sent you the link. But see, what people do, they get defensive. They refuse to listen because their defensiveness is up. I don't get defensive because I see it on both sides. I've seen qualified people. But look how the court system is set up. You have a judge, you have the district attorney, you have CASA. Here in Oklahoma, they made a law that CASA can come in. If that's the case, how come the NAACP can't come in? How come Dear John can't come in? How come we can't advocate for our own people when they're asking for an advocate? Why do you get to assign the advocate? That's because they can control the court. CASA is not there. I've seen corrupt written reports from a CASA worker. I've seen where they have told lies to get the people, those kids, because they.
What's the difference between because you might have to kind of break it down for me. Like, what's the difference between like CASA and DHS? What's the? DHS
is the agency that pulls the kid in after a report is made, right? They're the ones that are supposed to safeguard the kid. They become the custodial parent of the kid. CASA is the organization that comes in and is supposed to give the report back to the court of how good the children are doing, like the guardian ad litem, which is called the GAL. They're supposed to be on the side of the kid, but they all work against the parent. So how do you want a parent who may be financially challenged, who might not be understanding everything that's happening in the court? Because I can show you, I can give you audio where I have heard a judge say, don't give them these transcripts, because those transcripts may be condemning the stuff that they've said and done. That means that you violated the due process of those parents. How is it that CASA, that is there for the court, is now written into law that they can come in, but we don't have due access? How come if you go to court, how come you can't have the person with you that you want? There's a reason for that. So everybody, the cards are already stacked against these parents. They go in on their own. So then you get an attorney who takes your money, and now they're talking. You don't know what's happening. That attorney is now taking your money, and guess what? He's not working for you. She's not working for you.
I've always said that to a certain extent. I know there's some people out there that don't like when I say this, but they're not really necessarily putting their clients' best needs
no, because
first, because their loyalty goes to the bar first.
That is correct. And they get threatened, or the district attorney will threaten them. Sometimes the district attorney is the puppeteer.
And that actually specifically relates, especially when it comes to like the not child support court, but actually child support court.
That is correct.
And the custody courts.
That's right. So I'm just going to speak for what I can speak of and show evidence. And when I say evidence, if somebody says, "Hey, Miss Dana, show me an audio, give me proof," I can definitely do it, because there's two things about me. If I tell you I saw a purple man running down the street, you can bet your butt there's a purple man running down the street. And number two, if I tell you I have evidence, I have evidence. So what happens is the cards are already stacked against these parents, and family members are looking to get their grandparents. Oklahoma doesn't have grandparent rights. How many people can say, I don't like my grandparent? Grandparents usually are the anchor anyway of any home. You know, that's just how life goes, especially in minority families. You know what I mean? It's either your abuelita, your abuelito, in Spanish, that's your grandparent, your nana, your papi, your meemaws, whatever it is. How come they're not eligible? So what DHS does then is go back to the beginning of time and say, oh, well, if you had an issue, now you're not eligible for your child, for your family member, for your grandchild, your great-grandchild. Then foster care has an age limit from like 21 to 55. So if I have to be eligible, now you discriminated against me because of my age, or you discriminated against me because now you want to hold a pattern to something that may or may not be true. Mm-hmm. So then guess what? That child now goes to, it's rare that they go to somebody of the same culture. How many non-minorities are going to be able to deal with the kinkiness of our hair? How many minorities, wouldn't you rather see somebody who used to have a pattern in life, may have a colorful past, change their life?
I'm on both sides of that. And I think the people out there kind of know where I stand with that. Because when I say AFC, meaning Advocate for Children First, I'm always advocating what's in the child's best interest. So, and I think you can agree with this, is the fact that I look at each situation as, was this situation good? Okay, this one was good. What about this one? Okay, this one was okay. So I try to look at it like on a case-by-case basis.
I do too, but what if those cases, honey, what if those cases envelop lies? What if those cases envelop lies? For instance, if you have a judge that says, I'm removing this child on an emergency move, you would think it'd be a true emergency, right? Mm-hmm. Right?
I would hope so.
So DHS standard says there's true emergencies, and the court removes them. How does the court know that there's an emergency? Come on, Jay. How does the court know that there's an emergency?
I'm assuming they're probably going to go off based on what they've been told.
That's right. Who gets to tell that story? Come on now. Because the parents don't get to say it. Mm-hmm. It's DHS. So if DHS is telling a lie from the front.
You're talking about like a caseworker?
A caseworker, that is right. Somebody has to tell the judge that something is wrong. This is why this child is removed. Mm-hmm. The parents aren't involved at first. The kid is just instantly removed. So yes.
Don't they have to provide like some level of evidence? Like I know, here's some of what I do know. Like I know that
not at the beginning.
It's pretty much the work, because it ain't like they could bring no pictures or video or nothing.
It depends. Now I've seen children come in bruised, and at some point they say, "Oh, it's just over discipline." Mm-hmm. And I've seen some kids come in when I've seen them go pick them up. So for instance, you and I are married, and you and I have a fight. Our kids aren't there. Somebody's calling the police because of the yelling. They went and picked up kids. They can use that against you. They can use it against you, but you're not supposed to remove your children if the kids weren't there. Okay. Now, you and I fighting, we're married. We're going to fight.
So
we're
you'll
going to
have a
disagree.
bunch of situations where something like that will have
That
occurred and
is
they've
correct.
wrongfully taken it.
That is correct. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the ones that are right. I'm talking about the plethora of the ones that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody has ever had to deal, please write in.
You're just trying to make what's
out there
right what's been wrong.
I'm trying to make right out of what should have never happened. It's not even wrong. It becomes erroneous because once your kid is in the system, it has talons. They don't want him out. I have seen firsthand where a gentleman has never been able to be around his kid. He won his parental rights. The guardian ad litem turned around illegally, gave guardianship to the foster home, and the foster home doesn't even contact the parent. And money is short for them. It takes a lot of money to fight. I've seen where
especially like with lawyer retainer fees can
5, 10, 20,000, and that doesn't mean they're going to work on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they're going to work with you because you have to remember.
You're kind of just hoping.
That's right.
That's so messed up that you're just hoping, and I guess it's good that if you have
and you don't know until you go to court, and you won't know until you go to court. So yes, to answer your question,
I could actually relate to that because I remember a long time ago when I was young doing stupid crap, you know what I'm saying? And I had retained a lawyer and he ended up putting me, I think, kind of in a worse position.
That's right.
Me, I was just like.
And then what do? You get pleaded out. So it's called, that is called bleed 'em and plead 'em. That means I've got your money. I don't really care. Kind of like the state doesn't care. You may go to prison and then on appeal win, but guess what they got out of you already? How much is a phone call from the penitentiary? $10, $15? I mean, it's expensive. Send your family member money to eat, to eat some chips or whatever. So you're not eating some of the prison food. That's expensive. To get dressed, the shoes, whatever. Then to get sent pen and paper to write your family member. That stuff adds up. So it's no skin off their neck. It's the same as the foster care system. And if it didn't matter, how come the feds have to send in money to house your foster care person? Wouldn't you want that child with family? To learn their values, to learn their culture, So say you and I did have a fight, right? We're married. That doesn't mean you have the right to take my children. That doesn't mean you have the right to go in and lie. If we're asking police to be held accountable, caseworkers need to be accountable. Because when I tell you I have evidence where you're willing to transport them over state lines to give to a heroin addict. For what? Out of what? I have a young lady who stood on the stand and said, I'm sorry. And young people can relate to this, especially young males. Girlfriend gets mad, says you hit him after you may have just bumped him or whatever, but she says you hit him and now you get a domestic violence case on you that you're fighting while she's over here lying. And I have cases like that. So what do? You just need to say he hit you.
You could damn near be held guilty for a pending case.
That is right.
Or even if it's, and I know this, even if it's a no file, it could come up.
That's right. Well, because foster care, the DHS or CPS system will what we call substantiated. Even though there's nothing to substantiate, everything they substantiate. That means
they're going off of the allegation.
That's right. So as long as you get an allegation, then you're guilty. And that's what makes it hard. Even though she came back and said, I'm sorry, I lied, I was angry, this is what happened.
That's still going to be a stain on you.
And that's what happens. So now they go and they pick up a kid for something that never happened and you put him in a system. Now, the laws here in Oklahoma, and I'm pretty sure they're universal throughout, it says if you have a kid in the system X amount of time, if they're 0 to 4 years old, X amount of time, you get more money off that kid's head being in foster care. So if it really didn't matter, if you really truth and justice, why does that kid have a dollar amount?
What do we call that in the AFC? We call that #babies for benefits.
That's right.
And what happens is not only do those situations profit from the kids, but a different perspective. And one of the things that I harp on is the fact that it seems like we do a lot of reckless procreating.
That is
just
correct.
as human.
That's
period.
Right. With all of the contraceptives that are out there.
All of the options,
Protect
all
yourself.
of the choices. And for the life of me, for people that, because like I said, I always encourage people to just change their mentality. So I have to point out what I see as a problem.
That's right.
And what I see as a problem is if you live in poverty, if you can't take care of yourself. And I pointed this out on a previous show, and maybe I'll start to say this a little more often. Mm-hmm. Like if you're grown, you don't have any kids, you live by yourself, you're going to have to pay for a roof over your head. You're going to have to pay your electric bill. You're going to have to pay your water bill. You're going to have to pay for food. You're going to have to pay for transportation. You're going to have to pay for gas,
That's right.
clothing. anyway. So if you can't pay for that stuff anyway, then why would any logical person think about trying to bring children into a situation like that? And the only reason I can deduce that they do that is because they're going to gain something from it. And generally what they gain is they're going to get compensated by the state by way of Section 8, by way of food stamps. In some states, they actually do car vouchers, and you still have an option to pull child support from a man who, if they have any type of means.
Or woman. No gender discrimination. Men and women both pay child support. I know quality fathers that are there. So men and
I'm gonna not say nothing to get myself in
men
trouble.
and
So
men and women pay child support.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do my best to try to mind my mouth. My mouth gets me in a whole lot of trouble. So yeah, I had a couple videos taken down, but it is what it is.
That's all right. Men and women both pay.
But yeah, like I say,
but then there's sometimes, truthfully, on the other side of that coin, men and women have these conversations. Baby, I love you, and she's not really thinking. And I am an advocate to say, protect yourself. Men and women. You don't want children? Strap up. I have 4 boys, and I will be there every time they come out the door. Here's a condom. Here's a condom. Here's a condom. Because you see what happens in our, and I'm not going to just say Black, even in our Hispanic families, in our minority culture, we don't have the same conversation that Karen is having with Becky. We don't have those conversations about contraceptive. We don't have those conversations about, here is our heritage. This is what's been taken. We have the conversation of, from the cradle to the grave, this is what happens when you're Black, walk in the streets, stay safe. That's our first conversation. True? Let's agree. We can take the things that we can agree on and move those aside.
I've seen it happen because, like I say, not from my personal upbringing, but I can literally look at all of the situations that I know to say that has a lot of validity to it.
It does. And that's because that's the fear. That is what we've known through generations. I grew up advantaged, but my main conversation was, because there's always an advocate in me, is I want you to come back home alive. I don't want to visit you in a jail cell. But I have also seen where the system will come back at you out of a retaliation. So we don't have those conversations about birth control. But at the same time, when you get into it, hindsight is 2020. That means what you look back over your shoulder, that's 2020. So now we have to look at the situation with where we are. We are here now in a system that is set up not for us. And if they can make money, and think about it this way, honey, if foster care people get money off your kid, right? So the same money that you're getting for clothing, for food, they get money also for housing, everything that they're getting. Why don't we apply that to change the mind frame and educate the people the kids came from? Why not apply that money back to them? Because a lot of them aren't on Section 8. The people I had a family, Indian. One works for the Bureau of Prisons. One's a real estate agent. They came and took their kids because they made a report that somebody raped their daughter. And guess who they came after? The family. Like, why didn't you protect your daughter? Well, she wasn't here. When I found this out, I reported it. So what happened? They took the children. How backwards is that? They take the children, put them in the same home where they filed a complaint, and then they had to fight to get their kid out. And then every avenue was, you got to use our system. You got to use our people. Even in a workman's comp claim, you're not told to go to their doctor. You should go to any doctor, right? So why is it then that you're being forced to go to their agencies, their doctors, their psychiatrist, their whatever it is, their batterers intervention program? Why do we have to use their stuff? Because it's a ploy.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
That might get this video flagged, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I don't get the video flagged.
So I want to talk maybe a little bit of conspiracy, maybe a little bit of realism.
Okay.
Because I hear a lot of rumblings and conversations about people talking about, I do know this as a statistical fact. There's one child in America that's stolen every 40 seconds. And what's crazy about it is I think that some of my biggest videos, I think the one that we have featured on the channel right now is at 164,000 views. And we did that, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And it involved a woman who walked into the bathroom while this mother was trying to allow her small daughter to use the restroom. And she's standing there with her daughter, and this woman was trying to call her kid out of the stall so she could take her kid. And what was crazy was the mom realized that this lady, I guess, had been following them for a while, and so she just started recording, which, recording sometimes is like a godsend.
Right.
And she recorded the lady, and she was just saying, like, you would think something's wrong with her. And I personally didn't think anything was wrong with her. I think she was sound mind, knew what she was trying to do, knew that she wanted to take this kid and go do whatever it is that they needed to do. And what ended up happening was the mom gave her a good old fashioned can of, whooped her ass real good on camera. And I rarely, what am I trying to say? I rarely advocate violence.
I agree.
In this case, I said it was justified. And what's crazy about some people, and I know it ain't everybody, but what's crazy about some people is that when I'm always railing against no violence, no violence, no violence, and then I pick a situation and say, this was a valid ass whooping, then it's crazy how people kind of came after me for that. It's just like, you can't win for losing.
That's
but
right.
The reason I bring that up is because I actually had a guy who made a YouTube video about me and said, no, Jay, it don't happen like that. Who would actually take a kid in broad daylight?
Oh my God.
Who would?
It happens
and
all the time.
I said, actually, that's the only time that they would take kids, because that's the only time they're going to be visible. That's the only time that they're going to be out. And if you're talking about school age kids, they're generally going to only be out during that time period, because at night they're not out at the clubs. They're not going to, normally they're not, because a lot of them have to get up and go to school the very next day.
Or they're in bed. They have a schedule, normally.
So I'm just like, it actually makes perfect sense. And then the fact that I start showing evidence, and I can't even get credit for the evidence, which is strange in itself.
Right.
But I'm showing evidence of it happening. You see it happening. So here's my thing. I think people have maybe their personal reasons, maybe their selfish reasons for why they're trying to abduct a kid.
Right.
But I think it's something a hell of a lot more sinister going on, behind the curtain, that
I agree.
because to me, it seems like a big business.
It is.
Because there's just no way these many kids are turning up, disappearing all the time, just by the tens of thousands. Like, I think it's like 100,000 kids, 300,000. It's a very large number. My question to you is, what do you think is financing this? Because I don't think it's just some crazy person out in the country somewhere. I think it's some people that got some bread. I think it's some people that got some money.
So let me back up. I'm going to answer all
of
that.
You can just answer that in a way, don't want to get you in no trouble.
I won't get in trouble. I can handle the heat. I'm good with being in the kitchen. So first of all, I believe, I'm going to say me, every parent, every family member has a divine right to defend their family. Because if that's not true, why do you have stand your ground? This nation seems to be built on hypocrisy. So a mother has a divine right to whoop your ass if you're trying to touch my child inappropriately. Child pornography is a real thing. Abducting, murdering, and raping children is a real thing. Now, what finances the foster care system? And I'm going to share this with you. It's odd. So when people don't really have to touch the foster care system, you're kind of going by what people are telling you. And I'm going to tell you, I have witnessed that, oddly enough, everybody who gets a kid, they vie for the minority kids. That's what's in the system. Not by my numbers, but I can prove it because it's numbers that were given to me off of an FOIA, which means the Freedom of Information Act, from the Department of Health and Human Services. And it clearly shows that minority children are taken in the system 5 to 6 times higher than a non-minority. And then all of a sudden it pans out, says, oh, you're in the system. Life is great. Nothing happens. That doesn't even happen. It's not even logical. You can't take me in and then say it's equal when it's unequal at the beginning. That's not how math works.
And if you can remind me, I'll have a question about that. My memory is bad. I'll have a question about that, but you can keep going.
But to answer your question, I've seen every adoptive family. Now you have AWOC, which means adoption without consent. How do you even do that? You shouldn't have to do that. It is my divine right to take care of my children. Do parents end up failing? Yes. Do you have people in the penitentiary? Yes. But are they rightfully there? Are they over sentenced? Does it mean that you lose your child because you're sitting up here doing time? Those are variables and factors people have to consider that they don't. They don't consider that the state has already slanted the scales against the parent. They don't. So to answer your question, it's finance. The feds give money to states. Oklahoma is a poor state. Think about it. We rank at the worst of things. We're number 49 on the education pool. Come on, folks. There's only 50 states.
Last year it was 48.
Yeah, so we've dropped. And they're
I did my
that's
research.
right. Good job. I'm proud of you. But think about it.
My mom
We're
actually
49.
just retired too. So she
gotcha.
taught God for what, 42 years?
That's a long time. Long time. So I commend our educators. But I also have an issue with the fact that you're okay with being at the bottom.
The young lady that we know, that's actually also how I.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. So we're 49. There's only 50 states. And see, what happens is my people suffer. Hawaii.
No.
Yes. Unless they climbed up.
No.
So
you mean to tell me that Mississippi that trumped Oklahoma?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Look at it. Isn't that sad?
Ooh.
So you have to think
Lord
about
Jesus.
it. My people, this isn't from me, this is scripture. My people suffer for lack of knowledge. So if you undereducate them, and we have, number one, pipeline to prison, meaning you're on your way to prison. We're number one for incarcerating women, especially minority women. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma is supposed to be an Indian state. So half the Indians here get sidetracked because now they're in DHS. And it's very rarely that I've seen a tribe defend their own people. So to answer your question, it's financed through the feds. Now think who's running the feds. Who's running the feds? Trump. He's running that. So if we already know our immigrant status, they locked up kids in cages. They put them in cages, children, and held them, separated them intentionally from their parents. Slavery, intentionally separated them from their parents. Foster care, intentionally separating them from their parents. There is a reason. And I've always said there's a pedophile ring and there can't be everybody involved. And I'm not saying every caseworker. Don't write me nonsense. I'm not saying every caseworker. I'm saying that the cases I have are odd. And when they're odd, they're generally not true. When you have attorneys negotiating saying, you've got 5 children, just give us these, but you can have the new ones that you've had. Instead of taking that money and educating her about getting birth control. Now she's steady having kids, but if I'm okay with having one of my children, I should be okay with having all of my children.
Let me say this. So I get the fact that you're saying, like, you know, like it's our chief of the U.S. But
you take away that federal funding,
every 4 to 8 years we have a new president. This thing has been going on pretty much since the 70s.
Well, it has been going on since the 70s. In fact, Oklahoma foster care system has been separating families since 1936. So it's a moneymaker, just like prison is a moneymaker. But this time they're making it off the heads of children. Think about the vetting process. It's not hard to become a foster parent. They just want to make sure you don't have a felony. Well, think about this, honey. Who was the guy? Who was the cannibal guy? No, not Hannibal Lecter.
You're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer. He had no felonies. He was considered quote unquote the boy next door, and he's out here eating the hell out of people. He's out here eating arms and legs and brains. He wasn't caught until they went in and looked. Mm-hmm. So just because you don't have a felony doesn't make you quality, and just because you have a felony doesn't make you trash.
I agree.
So, and simply,
I agree with that.
I appreciate that. I agree with that. But at the same time, you're looking at the wrong variables. I can be a prostitute, but doesn't mean you get to rape me. That doesn't mean I'm not qualified to raise a child. Does that make sense?
Like kind of quickly, what are like some things right away that you could see that could remedy some of the
hold them accountable.
Hold
them accountable. Allow another advocate in that's not there for the state. Mm-hmm. Allow somebody else to come in. But see, what they do is, for Oklahoma, it's Title 10. They use confidentiality. Okay, well then the same way you wrote those people in the books, you can write us in the books. You can put Dear John in there and say, hey, justice or nothing, we want you to advocate. These people want you in there.
So you would just want to
give fair access to the courts. Give fair access to the courts. Because most times, think about it, and this is true, most times you want somebody of the same culture because you're going to understand the same mind frame, right? So, and even not, why is it only one written in the books? How come you can't just say, here's a list, that they give a list of attorneys. Those are the attorneys that are for juveniles. And these attorneys aren't worth salt. So if you give a list of that, how come you can't give a list of agencies? Maybe a Muslim comes in there. Maybe he wants CARE Oklahoma to come in. Maybe we want Dear John to come in. Maybe we want the NAACP
in a situation
to come
like this, I definitely think more options are good.
I agree.
So,
because why would you slant the table for your people?
Control.
That is right. And what is control about?
Absolute power, was absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I just believe that whenever you have too much control over a situation, it's going to crumble on itself.
When you concentrate yourself to win and you stack the decks against it, you have to wonder why. Why is it so hard to give these people back their children? And no, I'm not saying every caseworker. I have friends that are caseworkers, and they were phenomenal. And they looked at it and they challenged their bosses, saying that is not true. Are we thumbs upping? and I've seen it where caseworkers will speak up, but I've also seen a lot of cowards. I've seen more cowards than I've seen heroes. And right now, when you're defending a child, you need to be a hero. Be scared. Be scared. But when you protect
they like it when you said that. Because that, like I said, when we talk, and I always tell them, like, it's not a me thing, it's a we thing. When I say the AFC, because I don't look at this, like, I just look at me being a vehicle, like a platform, just a tool in this fight for our babies, to at least give them a voice. And I feel like all of us and the people out there listening, they all, have a voice, but I know that they definitely would like to.
Right. Like I mean, be scared, be nervous. Speaking up is scary. It's
a very powerful tool. Like the fact that people will record, the fact that people will speak. And I always tell people, I'd rather you make a report and be wrong, and they can investigate it and find out that it's wrong and be like, okay, it's unsubstantiated, as opposed to saying something and not saying anything.
That's right.
And it cost the baby their life.
That's right. And in Tulsa, they've had lawsuits. Children have ended up dead. Mm-hmm. But then when you try to hold on to the good kids that come from good families, and instead of reunifying them, you now have tried to do these underhanded deals and give them over and try to do these undercover guardianships, or you try to give them to foster care so that way that foster mom now can claim them on their taxes for the money instead of the family. There's a problem with that. You have to ask yourself why. So be scared. Be a gladiator, though. Courage is not for somebody who's saying, I'm not scared. Courage means you're acting in spite of being scared. Mm-hmm. That means that you are doing what's right no matter what you feel inside. Or your friendship. Standing up against a friend is harder than standing up against an enemy. There's no loss. You love your friends. You want to have them sit at your table. You break bread. You welcome them in your house. You share your personal. But if they're doing something wrong, you stand up. And that's what we don't see happening.
Okay, let me end it by presenting this, and I don't know if it's a question or not, but let me say this. And again, thank y'all for clicking that thumbs up. If y'all would, please click that thumbs up. I want to spend a few more minutes if I can with you. So please click that thumbs up. It'll help share the stream. Hopefully we're loud enough. If you guys can hear us, let me know if you can hear her, if you can hear me. Let me say this, because my hope is that more children going forward can lessen the amount of people who even have exposure to this system that we know is broken, that has issues, that has flaws, that has incentives for people to do things that are in their best interest as opposed to the children. So my solution is to try to make sure and grab a hold of as many people and as many eyes and as much attention as we can to make sure that we change the thought process and behaviors, that they don't get themselves to that point. Right. Because we know how broken it is. And I believe that that's what you guys are trying to work through and trying to fix.
That's correct. But see, Congress and Senate, they don't want to work through it. They want it broken. And when people want it broken, you have to ask yourself why.
I believe there's a financial incentive to have it that way. So what I would encourage for the people who do have, open minds and open hearts is just to really make sure and be very, very thoughtful, because it's easy nowadays to have a kid. Like you have, a lot of incentive to just have a kid recklessly for any and every reason.
And some people do it to hold on to that partner. If somebody's willing to walk out your life, let them walk.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hoping to try to do is get people to either really reconsider, a lot of this random reckless procreating that they're doing.
Correct.
And if they are already in a situation like I am, with my daughter and her mom, and we haven't been together since my daughter's been born, but I want to give a shout out to my daughter's mom because she has made it so easy for me to be able to be in my daughter's life.
That's an adult-minded person. That's working with an adult.
We need more of that type of mentality because I actually had to, I switched my job because I was working night shift, throughout the weekdays and I had weekends off. So I ended up finding a third shift position where I could work 3 days a week on the weekend and get my 40 hours in. Excellent. So I had to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was hard trying to work 12, 13, 14 hours in a day, but it allowed me to have my daughter while her mom went to work Monday through Thursday. Right. So people wonder why me and her bond is so close. It's because Daddy spent the time from the moment that she was born,
that's right,
all the way up into now. So that's a thing that took time from the moment that she entered this world.
That's right.
And I believe that women have an awesome, great gift. It's the gift of giving life. It's a great power. It's an innate gift from God. And what I believe,
but it takes two.
What I believe is that if you know that gift is a precious thing,
amen,
and I've told family members this, I said, all I ask for you to do is just do what you can. Mm-hmm. If this man wants to try, give him an opportunity to try. If he wants to spend a day, give him the day. If you can manage it, just continue to keeping your heart open and keeping your mind open. Unless you see that there's something detrimental. If it's not something detrimental, try to just make sure that man has every opportunity to give, whether he doesn't, whether the time is kind of spread out, because that's the nature of the beast that we're in right now. That's the society that we're in right now, is that we're having so many births outside of wedlock. So we're already bringing these children into this world, knowing that they're not going to have a family structure.
That's right.
So I think it's important for us to try to at least remember the semblance of what marriage was, which is just a social construct. And you have these children being raised inside of a two-parent home, really just to show balance. And you have the balance of the emotional, the logical, I want to do this or I don't want to do that. You have the balance, and people try to work out those dynamics together, and you get a chance to, and when children see that, then they have a sense of value in themselves also, not only for a mental capacity, but when it comes to what they want to grow up and become, then they can see examples of what their mother and their fathers did and either see what they want to do or what they don't want to do.
Exactly.
And what we have happening is a lot of times is these children don't, especially the young men, because Chicago is a freaking mess.
Chicago is a mess.
And I explain it to people where the mentality comes from, and that's because these young men, these boys don't value themselves. And if they do not value themselves, then they're going to go out into the world and they're not going to value anybody else either. So if I feel like I'm not crap, then what is anybody else to me?
That's right.
So that's kind of where I like to kind of lay down my foundation and try to make a difference. And another thing, and I got to give us, not me, but us, a shout out for actually getting a person arrested for the death of a kid. And I don't know if you heard about the story out of Stockton, California. It's making rounds now.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just tell you, it's safe to tell you now, but the prosecutor, the investigator actually called me.
Oh, okay.
Actually, to me, I was like,
well,
it's like, you're calling me, but and was able to deliver me some news. And apparently, I had, because see, I'm also good. I'm not great with communication. I'm okay with communication, but I used to have to do telemarketing for a living. I've done customer service for a living. So I have an idea about how to deal with people. And I know one of the most powerful things you can do is listen.
That's right.
And so what I did was I gave her an opportunity for me to listen to her and her story. And sometimes you just let people talk, and they'll talk themselves right
to the information you need.
And so I let her talk, and people wonder, well, why was the stream so long? That's why the stream was long. She wanted to talk, and let her say as much as she needs to say. And we were actually featured on the news because based on our stream, they had enough information to make an arrest on her. Excellent. So what ended up happening to that baby, which is Billy Simone Williams, and most of you guys should know that, but the stepmother, Takesha Williams, is now implicated in that baby's murder. I personally believe that she was the primary person that was around this kid because the dad worked all the time. But they'll sort all of those facts out, in court or whatever.
Right.
But I'm honored. I'm thankful. The fact that, something that I wasn't sure that people would care about. People do care about
people
clearly.
Care.
And
they
it
just
did
have
make
to know
a
the
difference.
information.
And it's nice to have something that's tangible where I can say, look, here's something that we actually contribute.
That's right.
So all I want to do is not only, contribute and help as much as possible, but not only that, but give, whether it be just a couple of people or whatever the case is, more information about kind of what you guys do, the thought process, a lot of the hurdles and challenges that you guys face.
Yes. Okay. So the hurdles and challenges are trying to get people to understand that just because somebody goes to court doesn't mean they are rightfully charged. And because they go to court doesn't mean that they are bad parents. That means that there's some things to work with, through, and around. I know for the cases I have, these are good parents whose kids have essentially been kidnapped. And when you have a state or a governor's office that refuses to listen and look at the evidence, you have to ask yourself why. When you have a state that stacks the cards against you to where we don't get to come into court, but their own people do, there's an issue. When you have a state who bases all of their financial being on the heads of a child, babies being sold, there's an issue. And when you have to hide so much, if it's not transparent and clear, there's an issue. And my organization, For Dear John, Justice or Nothing, can I give the number? 405-254-0933. You can text, call. I will gladly defend. I don't care where it is. I will defend. If it's no more than saying, and I'm not saying everybody's right, I'm saying that people need a clear defense.
So you guys will hear that on tape. So if you want to rewind, and you can, you should be able to rewind live. But there is yet another resource for people who ask, what are the resources? There's one more that you guys will have access to. Now, would you mind giving that one more time?
405-254-0933. I also work with the NAACP legal redress team. So we have the resources there. I can pass those on as well. But there's also a protest. I don't care how far you can hear me. If you can get there on Tuesday at 9:30 at the corner of Classen and Western Avenue, right from the Juvenile Center, 5905, you'll see us standing out. Come out, support the people that need the support. Let them know that there is love there, because these are actually good families. And in order to keep a family intact, we've got to know that there's support in our community. All right?
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's really kind of where I want to close it out at. But I am so honored. I appreciate, you kind of working with my craziness and my schedule and stuff like that.
And kudos to the mother of your daughter. I enjoy seeing families work together. That's a maturity that says, I don't care what else is going on. We are here together for the benefit of our child.
Because we've had some imperfections. We've had some difficulties.
But those are things that you work with.
But overall, we've always put my baby first.
That's all that matters. And that's what we want the viewers to do. That's what we want the families in court to do. That's what we want the community to do. Because it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm-hmm. Would you email me that info that Dana's talking about? Do you have a website?
I do, Dear John. It should be coming up in about a week. But if you need my email address, again, my phone number, 405-254-0933. And my email is D as in Delta, B as in Bravo, ROCKNAACPOKC@outlook.com. So D Brockway, NAACP, OKC@outlook.com.
There you go. So anybody else, if you guys need information, so there you go. So you saw it, so you got that information.
And don't forget the protest this Tuesday, 9:30, Classen and Western. Please come out, support the families. Not asking for anything. You can hold a sign, but support the families. Let them know that there is community love and that people understand children first.
Okay. Now, again, once I stop this stream, you guys will be able to rewind. So if you need to capture that information again, all you got to do is just hit that rewind button. I don't think it'll let you do it right now, but you'll definitely be able to get that information. So for the people who were here and were able to drop by, I appreciate that. Y'all know this is very rare for me to be able to do this on a Saturday because I usually got my daughter, but we did our time yesterday. And so I was able to have some time here today. So Thank
Excellent.
all of you guys for
Thank
at
you.
least coming through. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to the AFC podcast. Again, Dana, I want to thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
So, all right, guys, we'll see y'all on the next stream, and I'll see y'all when I get back home. Peace.
Peace.